All right. Introduce yourself.
Yes, I go by Cherry on the streets. Um, I've been out here about 4.5 years this time. I was stuck out on the streets with a vehicle a couple years before that for about 3 months, and then my vehicle got totaled, and that's what got me like stuck on the streets until I temporarily pulled my head out of my rear and went back home. And I promised my kids and their dad that I wouldn't go back out on the streets again, and I didn't have any intention of doing so, but unfortunately, I trusted the wrong people, made a few wrong choices, and then in the attempt of recovering the items and the money that was stolen from me, before I knew it, it was like 2 3 weeks, and I was still not back home. And that at that point in time, pride and embarrassment kind of kept me from going back because I didn't want to be like, oh, sorry I'm back on the street. Sorry I disappeared. And but this is what happened. And oh, by the way, your bike also got stolen. I have no money, none of the things that I went to go get out to get, or a phone. So I managed to lose additional stuff trying to get back the money that got stolen from me in the beginning, because I didn't follow my gut. And you should always follow your gut, because whenever you don't, nothing good can come from it. Because I believe that that gut is actually God or your guardian angel telling you, hey, not that way, not this, go a different way. But what initially got me in the position that led to me kind of getting stuck on the streets was when I was a teenager, about 14. I got bacterial spinal meningitis, and that triggered the onset of degenerative disc disease, which everyone gets, but typically not till their late 60s, early 70s. Where the fluid in your spinal fluid starts to evaporate. Essentially, you lose fluid and you start getting disease in the discs, and that's why you see elderly people kind of hunched over and getting, shrinking, because they lose that padding between their vertebrae, and that leads to a lot of back problems.
Yeah, I see that a lot with
Drug users, and with the
they
fentanyl using.
yeah, they bent over and they got the
Mm-hmm.
hunchback. I
See,
even see
and
young
with
kids.
that one, there's a couple of circumstances that lead to that. More often than not, it's due to what I call the zombie lean, or the Fetty Wap, where they.
The Fetty Wap.
Yeah, well, the Fetty Wap is more of the crazy, like, flailing, where they're like doing the crazy dance and running into stuff and just on one or 10, whatever. And they are just kind of, they make a lot of us look bad, because there's some people that literally the fentanyl reacts very badly with their system. I mean, obviously it's a drug. It's not meant to be consumed recreationally. Its original purpose was to kill the pain for terminal patients, to allow them to, because they're going to die regardless. It's been, unless God says otherwise. But it's made to comfort them throughout the process of them dying. So essentially, just to make there's someone. Yeah, that's it. It's because it's an extremely strong and dangerous pain medication. So like morphine and things like heroin, things like that were, up until that point, some of the stronger what they're called downers or sedatives, painkillers, narcotics, and those are nothing compared to fentanyl. Fentanyl is essentially like pure fentanyl, which is typically not sold because it's what they call, you know, a man down or a killer. You know, the pure fentanyl, one little microscopic drop, especially to someone,
That's fine. Pick it up.
especially when I'm trying to hold on. I had 9 mini strokes over the last few years. It kind of messes with my what I call short-termed memory. So for short periods of time, sometimes I forget the vocabulary words that I know because I have a very extensive, annoyingly smarty pants vocabulary that I use to put people who behave as if they're just geniuses and use that to put people down. I use that my vocabulary to knock them down a few notches and put them back in their place. But so with individuals who don't have a tolerance for opiates, narcotics, but specifically opiates, because of the way they react with the body, one little microscopic, like almost unseeable drop of pure fentanyl would kill some individuals who have a severely high tolerance, you know, and that's because of its strength and what it was used for. So when they were administering it to individuals who were terminal, they were administering what looked or appeared to be a large dose, but it was always had binders and essentially cut like in it. It had other things mixed in it, like vitamins, saline, which is an electrolyte. That's because if you just drink pure water without having some sort of salt in your system, it will actually result in you suffocating and drowning in your own blood because your red blood cells go unchecked and they swell up and they can't pass through the blood vessel walls. So then the oxygen can't get where it needs to go. So that, you know, like they say, everything in moderation. Too much or too little of anything is not good. You know, too much oxygen, you know, because oxygen is the thing that keeps us alive, but it also starts killing us as soon as we're born.
What was your life like? Explain to me what was your life like
Prior
before
to
the
opiates?
Yeah.
Well, see, I actually got put on opiates to the hospital because of that, you know, the early onset degenerative disc disease. By 26, I had 65% degeneration. I'm about at 98% right now. Essentially, the doctor said it's a miracle that I'm walking, and I believe that it's, you know, by God's grace, you know. And I also, at 40, you know, because every 7 years you can go through DNA, it'll change your metabolism, your taste buds, all that changes. At 40, I lost 80 pounds sitting on my butt eating junk food because I went from having hypothyroidism or slow thyroid, slow metabolism to hyperspeed. So I was used to always be over 200 pounds. And because of that weight and all the damage in my back, I was working at Amazon and I had, I almost fell, but I kind of brought myself down to the ground so I wouldn't fall. Ended up going to the hospital, got an MRI, and that's when they told me that like 26% of the discs in my spine are damaged or diseased. So I got on the Percocets, and then I went through pain management, and then over time, you know, you build a tolerance to that. But my sister-in-law was stealing mine because she was a heroin addict. So she was stealing my pills, and so I had to get something to compensate in the middle of the month so that at the end of the month when I went to my pain management doctor, I would have some in my system so that I could get my prescription. And, you know, as things go, you know, people steal stuff, you lose things, and you build tolerance, and eventually I started having to use more, and then I lost my pain management, and then I had to go fully onto purchasing my painkillers on the streets, you know, and you still build tolerances for basic opiates, things like Subutex, which behave like an opiate, as far as pain relief, but without the addiction or you still have withdrawals if you stop taking it, but it's safer and legal. And then there's methadone, which is pretty much just like morphine. You know, you can still go out and get high, but with like the Suboxone and Sublocade, when you take that, it blocks the receptors that give you that euphoric feeling, while also blocking the receptors that make you crave it and have withdrawals. And because of that, you know, I was not able to get into, when I got stuck on the streets, into shelters, because the shelters have requirements. You have to take drug classes. You have to, you know, some of them they require urinalysis like weekly, monthly, you know, and those are all things. If you can't pass that drug test, you can't stay at the shelter. You know, if you don't do the classes, you can't stay at the shelter. And being with using those drugs, you know, a couple of hours later, you need to use more. And it's always that way. So then you have to step away from work and you're taking too many breaks, and then you end up, what happens? You lose your job because your performance is dropping, you're taking too many breaks, and then they start noticing things, and eventually they'll most likely come to the conclusions that you're on drugs, which is a very large liability for the company, because if you get hurt and they're not aware you're on drugs and they don't, you know, do P tests or you fake it, then they're going to end up paying for, you know, workers' compensation, and it's very expensive. So, you know, all those things prevent people from being able to be in some sort of shelter situation. You know, then you're sleeping on the streets, you sleep somewhere where it's trespassing, then you get yourself arrested, then you have a record, and that further makes it more difficult to work, you know, and you get this stigma on you that no matter how intelligent you might be, how educated you might be, a lot of individuals don't look at, you know, drug addiction or alcohol abuse and things like that. They don't look at it like it is, which is a disease. You know, it's a behavioral health issue, and it's not something that, you know, arresting people and throwing them in jail for a week, a month, 2 months, waiting for something to come through to be able to incarcerate them long term and make their money.
Let me ask you a question. What's the craziest thing you've seen, or the most dangerous thing that you've seen living on the streets and doing drugs and things like that?
There was a time up on Bell, near Cave Creek. There was this, I believe it was part native, and Hispanic, not 100% sure. He had been kind of hopping from person to person and mooching off of them, trying to get mooching off of everyone, trying to get free drugs, free cigarettes, free drugs, just free everything, basically. And at one point in time, people just kind of got tired of him doing that, so a few people finally said no. And he was, I believe, schizophrenic or DID, dissociative person or identity disorder, like split personality disorder.
Right.
But with the DID, a lot of times some of the personalities or identities are unaware of the others. So the main host, the person before the traumas and splits, they're not always aware of what's going on when they're in a snap. When, if you ever watched the movie Split, it's a very, very good depiction of DID. But he just lost his shit and pulled out a gun and started shooting and hit like 9 people. One person almost, yes. and one person almost died. Thank God the paramedics got to the location at the QT. It's on Bell, just west of Cave Creek. And he just started shooting. He shot my one friend. He got shot in the calf, and he almost cut his Achilles tendon, like clean off, to where he would essentially not be able to walk on that foot anymore. And then his girlfriend got shot in the arm. A couple of people got shot in the gut, and it was all over being told no when he was asking for free drugs, because it started out as asking, then he got to the attitude where he was almost demanding it, like he was owed it. And I've seen that happen a lot with fentanyl. Some people, it just alters their personality fundamentally, and they become a whole other person that you would never think would do, or say things they would say or do. They wouldn't normally do that. I had a friend who always stated, when you see people, hey, this is my homegirl Cherry, like she's the most solid person I've ever met. If you fall asleep around her and you have your stuff out, when you wake up, you might not have your stuff right there, but it will be safe. She'll pack it up and put it away, make sure that it doesn't get stolen from you, and or that you don't get hemmed up by the cops for having stuff out that you shouldn't have out. And then he started going from using the pills to the fentanyl powder.
What's the youngest person
I've seen using it?
or
I'm not 100% sure if they were utilizing the fentanyl or the pills or the G, or if they were essentially acquiring it for someone else. But I think the youngest that I seen someone using it was 12.
12?
Yeah.
The youngest that you've seen using which
12.
one?
Meth.
Meth?
Mm-hmm.
It was 12 years old on the streets of Phoenix?
They didn't live on the streets, but they were out. They'd come sneak out of mom and dad's house. Or actually, it was a kid who lived with his grandparents. They didn't know that they were 12. They looked a lot older. I found out about 4 hours later that they were 12, because the kid's grandma came through looking for them, and they described them, and I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't, that person sounds familiar. I wonder what the heck's going on.
The girls that's on fentanyl and meth out here, do they get taken advantage of sexually?
Yeah, some of them do. If they don't have any street smarts, like no experience on how to identify when someone's trying to pull the wool over your head, like the naivety of some of the people, especially because some of these kids are like, because up in this area is close to Deer Valley and Paradise Valley, so it's some of the upper middle class and upper class kids, kind of silver spooners essentially, and so they've been sheltered. And the unfortunate truth of a sheltered life is that once they get that small taste of freedom, they're gonna fully take advantage of it and go just wild out. But they don't get any street smarts experience while doing it. So they're just sitting there wilding out, and they've never been taught anything by family or friends because they lived that silver spooner life. They were sheltered. Their parents kept everything from them, they didn't experience life in general, so they're going out, going crazy, buying drugs here, there, and everywhere, and they're just not even thinking about it. Like,
What's one of the things that you saw a young woman get taken advantage of? Like describe
Well,
it.
I didn't actually see it. I came up after the fact, so I wasn't 100% sure at the time if it was actually true. But and a few things happened from this. There's an older, middle-aged gentleman who unfortunately is mentally unstable due to contracting syphilis, and he contracted it before they came up with a cure, so it's already gotten to his brains, and he has the thought process of essentially like a 10-year-old, and this girl was nutted out, or she was what we call blued out. So she was kind of like not asleep completely, but she was very incoherent and unable to essentially understand what was going on, try to stop it or anything like that. And
So
he
she was
proceeded to
getting
pull her
possessed?
pants. He proceeded to pull her pants down and started fingering her. Because he didn't like actually have sex with her or anything though. He's kind of still got that teen, prepubescent type of mentality, because the syphilis has altered his brain. He's crazy. Like, he listens to static on a Walkman, walking around like he's listening to music. Like, he's not him. He's not who he used to be. Like, so he was doing that, and a couple a year or so later, he was back up in that area, and this one individual had found out about it and found out that it was actually in fact true, that he did in fact take advantage of that, the lady, and he got his throat cut. He didn't die because a friend of ours saved him. She, held his throat, but he got his throat slit by someone else who had found out that he had fingered this girl while she was nodded out on blues.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Mhm.
What's you got any last messages for the people?
Well, if you do find yourself out on the streets and you don't have the ability to get off the streets at that time, keep your belongings on you. Do not trust anyone that you don't know, and sometimes even if you do know, you can't really trust them. Always follow your gut, and one of the things that was told to me, believe none of what you see and only half of what you hear. Or none of what you hear and half of what you see.